So it's David Howell and myself. At one point, we were both joint British champions, and we've grown up playing chess together for many, many years. So we wanted to inspire you guys.
How much chess did I play? I guess you mean when I was
10,
young.
When you were 10.
When I was 10. Ooh, good question. So, back in my day, there wasn't online chess really. Well, at least I didn't play online that much. So, my parents used to take me most weekends to small tournaments, even if it was just to the club, just to get one game a weekend, or ideally maybe a few more than that. But the main thing was I tried to play as much as possible, and I always analysed the games, whether that was with a friend or a coach. I always analyse the games, and I think actually the analysis is just as important as the playing. So if you do play games, a lot of you now during lockdown will be playing online games, blitz games, rapid games. If you do play them, make sure you have a notebook with you. Try and analyse the games afterwards. Just know where you went wrong. And everyone makes mistakes. Everyone loses games. I've lost thousands of games in my life, but if you learn a little bit from each loss, then that will help you in future. So yeah, play as much as possible.
Next question. When did you tell yourself, I will become a super GM?
Ooh, I still think I'm an imposter. I still don't believe I'm a super GM deep down.
Over 2,700, you've got many accolades to your name. So
yeah, so
modest.
Yeah, so actually when I was young, I was very lucky. My parents told me just play chess as long as you enjoy it. And I still enjoy it now. And I hope all of you guys out there enjoy it. And if you keep enjoying it, you'll keep improving. So I'm sure a lot of you can become grandmasters as long as you enjoy it and work hard. That's the main trick.
Okay. When was your best win as a child? Now, I'll just interrupt before you start answering. David shot to fame when he beat Grandmaster John Nunn in a simultaneous. How old were you then? 8?
Yeah, 8. It wasn't in a simultaneous, Sarah. It was.
in real life.
Yeah, it was a blitz game. It was 5 minutes plus 3 seconds time control. And at the time, he'd been one of the top players in the country, top players in the world for a long, long time. So, I was 8 years old. I got maybe a bit lucky in the game. But even looking back, actually, I saw some nice tactics in that game. And that's why working on your tactics, you can beat anyone. A grandmaster, okay, it's a very consistent player, but even they have weaknesses. So even if I play you guys, for example, if you attack me, if you scare me, then sometimes you'll beat me.
Who would you rather play? Morphy, Fischer, Karpov, or Kasparov?
Ooh, good question. I've been very lucky. I've played Kasparov 27 times, actually. Oh no, 28 times even.
A couple of years ago, you trained with him when he was training.
Yeah. That's right. I was very lucky. Kasparov invited me out to his house in Croatia, and we trained together for 5 days. So I guess I can tick Kasparov off my list. That was a lot of fun. He's an amazing player and a really cool person. He knows about everything. And actually, he's the most ambitious person I've ever known. He works so, so hard. Even though he's been retired for 15 years, he knew more about modern openings than I do. So, okay, other than that, I'd probably say Morphy, just because my style is so opposite to his. And I'd like to see how those two styles kind of clashed. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, let's move on. So we've got lots of questions to get through.
Ooh, okay.
So I think this is for both of us. What should one do the day of the tournament? So I'll answer it first. So when I have a tournament, I'll normally do some tactics in the morning. And if it's a slow play match, I'll obviously look up my opponent and do some preparation. But tactics are really important in the morning, just to get sharp and get ready for the match. If you're just going in now without even thinking about it, then you start the game doing your preparation, you might be tired and do something wrong. So it's really good to get in the zone before the game actually starts. David?
Yeah, I fully agree with Sarah. I actually have a slightly different routine, but I do tactics as well, but I normally do it maybe in the evening, just maybe either before or after dinner. And then I find that slowly my mind will, I tire myself out with those tactics, and then my mind will wind down. And in the morning, I like to maybe stay fresh, maybe either go for a run or just make sure that you don't want to arrive at the board feeling rusty or not having looked at chess. Because if you arrive at the board not in the zone, then you'll spend the first 20 minutes maybe not playing the best moves or not fully focused and concentrating. So similar to Sarah, yeah, I agree. Just make sure you're fresh, whatever that is, whether it's tactics, whether it's a bit of exercise, something to get the brain going.
He likes to sleep for about 12 hours before his game.
Yeah, sleep is very important. Sleep is very, very important.
Okay, so moving on to improvement and study. What activities would you recommend for improving your chess, and in what proportions? So, for example, if you had 10 hours a week available, what proportion would you spend doing puzzles, playing games, reviewing old games, etc.? And what would a good week study plan look like? So this is from James. I'll answer it first and then I'll get David to add in. So yeah, definitely you need to do daily tactics just to keep sharp. It's much better to do them daily rather than just cramming the night before a tournament and doing like 100 the day before or something. Reviewing old games is good. I always think that if you're playing an opponent, going back to our other question as well, it's quite good just to go through some of their games as well and look at games they've lost, and that's good preparation in terms of general preparation for chess games. Yeah, you should always play games, but I don't think you should be spending loads of time on openings. I think it's more important to be tactically sharp, make sure you've got a good idea and go into the games confident. David, do you want to add some stuff, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did a good job. Again, you've given me time to think as well. I mean, firstly, that's a really, really good question because like half of chess is just not preparation for the specific games, but just kind of keeping your mind fresh. And I think tactics, puzzles, that's a very important thing. If you just set aside 20 minutes a day or half an hour a day, at least, just to kind of get into a routine. Openings, I agree with Sarah. Don't worry too much about studying openings. I mean, when you get to maybe grandmaster level, then you can spend 8 hours a day studying openings. But if you only have 10 hours a week, I think actually it's far more important to play and to analyze those games. And actually by playing, you learn the openings as you go along. Yeah, I mean, even if you just make one mistake in the opening, you go and analyze that game afterwards, then you know exactly where to get improve next time. So I'd say maybe 40% playing, 40% analyzing those games, and 20% tactics, puzzles.
Okay, so we'll move on now to goals and motivation. So question for you, David. How did you set goals for your chess? And do your goals motivate you to keep working hard on your chess these days?
Yes, actually, maybe that's one thing that I've never lost. I mean, I'm an old man now. I'm older than you guys out there, but I think ever since I was young, I always like to set those goals. And the thing is, if you fail to get those goals, that's completely fine too. Because over time, again, if you keep enjoying, if you keep working hard, doing the right things, long term, those goals will arrive often when you least expect it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't think, oh, I have to win this game in order to get this goal or to win this tournament. Don't think like that. Just focus on the board, forget the opponent, just you and the board, and those goals will arrive no matter what. So even these days, I try and set goals, but it's not the end of the world if I don't achieve them. How about you, Sarah?
Goals, yeah, it's good. Yeah, definitely good to set goals. And like David said, if you don't achieve them, that's okay. But then at least you've got a target to work towards, and it keeps you motivated and excited about chess. So.
It's more kind of rewarding and satisfying if the goal isn't an easy one anyway. So try and set high goals. Just it doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as you slowly move towards it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now we're moving on to blitz and variance. Is blitz detrimental to a young player's development as a player? And I will answer that first. I think it is until you become like really good at chess, because then you kind of kid yourself into thinking you're really good if you can win loads of blitz games. And you think, oh, I beat this really good player, but obviously the game wasn't perfect and you probably made loads of mistakes. But then you think, oh, well, I won, so I'm really good. I don't need to improve. So I do think blitz is detrimental to a young player's development. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think blitz is, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's really risky. I mean, if you play a lot and if you kind of just focus on the clock and if you just focus on maybe 1 or 2 move tactics, then it can be detrimental. It can be a bad thing for your chess. But if you do it the right way, I think it can be also a great training tool. Like what I always do is I play blitz sometimes. I'll set maybe in a couple of hours a week or maybe a bit more. And I always have a notebook next to me. I'll write down exactly where my opponent surprised me in the opening or where I feel there was a mistake. Or if I saw patterns like of mistakes I kept repeating, like for example, if I would always lose to a knight fork or if I would always lose in a certain type of pawn structure, I'd make a note of that from the blitz games and I'd know what weaknesses to work on. So if you do play blitz, make sure you set aside at least the same amount of time to work on what went wrong in those blitz games. But yeah, don't play too much for sure.
Yeah, go through the games. It's very
just a little bit, yeah.
And don't go through the games by putting the engines on, because the problem children are doing now is just literally putting the engine on and going, I was winning. And it's like you weren't winning because you didn't know why you were winning. David and I will both agree, I'll speak for David, but do not use the engine until you've properly looked at the game, or it's very detrimental for your development as a chess player.
Yeah, I think, so me and Sarah, we grew up in a time when computers weren't that strong, engines weren't that strong, and that helped us. Like, we have to use our brain, we have to work things out, and that helps our deep understanding. So even nowadays, it's easy to just click a computer and see, okay, white's slightly better, but you have to understand why, or why white's winning, or why this variation works. And for that, you need to use the brain, not the engine.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've got a section on openings now. We touched on that slightly earlier. So let's get started on this. Are there any openings for white which are a little different and you think would be effective for under 8 level? David, do you want to start on that one?
Another good question. That depends on your style, really. I mean, if you really like to attack, then let's think openings. I don't want to recommend the King's Gambit, but
well, Daniel King's done a new thing on that, hasn't he? And
okay,
it's becoming quite popular. DVD.
I mean, I think my main tip would be, if there's a player you really like if you guys see some of the top players, there's a player you really like, maybe look at their openings and not necessarily copy them, but try and see whether you like kind of the positions it gets you in the middle game. If you really like to attack, like, try and choose an attacking player. So maybe, for example, Jorbava or Simon Williams in England, or always try and choose a role model. That's how I learn my openings. Like, if I want to get a really solid defense, then a kind of solid defense is black. I'll look at the games of Gelfand or Kramnik. If I want something really aggressive as white, I'll look at, I don't know, Carlsen, Mamadjarov, Nakamura. So yeah, if you base your openings on maybe a really, really strong player, then that's a better way to learn than just randomly picking and choosing, because every opening's good if you understand it.
Yeah, exactly. I used to look at games on like of top players and then think, oh, that's a good opening, I'll try that, and it's quite a good way of learning. You see an instructive game from an instructive player. Guys, maybe look at David's games. You'll see some excellent C3 Sicilians in the mix. That might be a good suggestion against the Sicilian.
C3 Sicilian and the Grunfeld, they're the two loves of my life.
I love the Grunfeld as well. It's hard though. Okay, next question to you, David. In your session yesterday, you made an important point that you reached Grandmaster level without doing too much opening theory. What would you do if you came across a sharp line and didn't know it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the one thing I made sure is, okay, although I played the same opening pretty much all the time until I was 18, until I was 20, the thing is, I made sure that I knew any forcing variation, anything really deep, then I would have analyzed it at home or with a friend. Nowadays, maybe with a computer, but I only turn on the computer, even now, even I'm a Grandmaster, when I play against other Grandmasters, I only turn on the computer if it's something like really sharp, like lots of tactics, lots of exchanges, lots of checks, captures, those kind of things. So occasionally you'll get caught out by a new idea, but I think it will be one time out of 50 that you're caught with a new idea if you know your opening inside out, if you really work hard on it and practice a lot on it. So it doesn't matter if you just play one opening, as long as you know it as well as you can.
It's much better to do that. And David's understanding of chess would mean that if he was caught out, he would be able to navigate his way around it, rather than, it's not like he's just learnt the moves off by heart. He actually understands the positions.
That's why, yeah. No, but that's why Sarah mentioned working on these puzzles and tactics, and that's where kind of, if you work on those, then if you get caught in a new situation in the game, you can work things out. Trust yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So this is related to that point and linking to the lecture I gave on psychology yesterday. How would you handle this problem, or I'll change it slightly? How would you handle like a hard position from a psychological perspective? So you're sat there really worried because you don't know the line and you feel like you've been out prepped. What would you do? How would you handle that with your brain?
Yeah, so that's a very good question again. A lot of the players I saw yesterday playing in the long play tournaments, they were rushing. And actually, if you find yourself not sure what to do, what I used to do when I was young is I would sit on my hands, like literally sit on my hands just for 20 seconds and just think, okay, it's a new situation. I'm caught by surprise. I don't really know what's going on. Let's just try and figure things out, like a puzzle, or like, it's a challenge. It's a new challenge, and you've got to embrace that. Don't get scared. Don't panic. Just slowly think and work things out logically. Look for candidate moves. Look for kind of try and calculate if you can. There's no problem in chess that can't be solved.
So what's going through your head then if you get somebody, say Nakamura is playing you and he's out prepped during the opening, you've been out prepped and you've got to navigate your way around it. What's going through your head? How do you rather than the initial, oh, this is so annoying, I wish I'd looked at this line, how do you then react?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to become, this sounds really bad, I tried to become really kind of cold-blooded and just think, okay, I can do this, I can solve it, no emotions, just try not to think about, oh, I wish I could solve this, just try and get all of that out of it, just focus on you and the pieces. Actually, it's funny you mentioned Nakamura. Like a few years ago, I played a game against Nakamura, and he prepared 42 moves. He prepared every single move in the whole game. He had more time on the clock at the end than he started with. But I managed to draw that one, even though I was playing against a computer, because I just sat there. I knew he'd prepared it all, but I just sat there. I thought, okay, like, I know this is a fine line for me. I've played this opening many times. There can't be a problem. No matter what he's prepared, I can solve it. I can do it. You just got to believe in yourself and, yeah, just work things out. Just forget all the emotions. Just focus on the board.
Brilliant. Okay, so how much should young players, this question is from Dildara, a 5-year-old who's a very good player, member from the tournament yesterday, we're going through his games, focus on opening theory. Should we try and perfect certain openings or experiment with unfamiliar ones and broaden our knowledge and experience? Now, you've kind of answered that question already, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I mean, it's always nice to know about other openings. So like, for example, if you follow top players' games, or if you read books or read magazines, or if you just look on the websites, you'll pick up things about different openings as you go along. But I think, especially at a very young age, it's just best to kind of focus on knowing what you play inside out. And once you know those things, it's there for the rest of your life. You can fall back on those openings. For example, I played the C3 Sicilian since I was 5 years old. Even now, sometimes if I don't want to try something new, I can still go back to the C3 Sicilian. So you'll pick things up as you get older naturally, but it's best to probably just focus on what you do. If you know it better than your opponent, that's half the battle.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've already answered this question, but just how do you choose which openings to play and what are your favourites? So Dave's already mentioned the Grunfeld as being one of his favourite openings. Anything else you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess those were just my favorite openings because I taught them when I was young, but nowadays I'm a bit older and I know what I like, the type of positions I like a bit more. I like kind of going for slow maneuvering positions and then heading for the end game. So my opening tastes have changed according to that. But yeah, I mean, basically, I think anyone's favorite opening is the opening they win the most with. So again, it comes back to working hard and practicing a lot, and your favorite openings, I mean, decide in a few years. Let's see how your results go, and then you can all decide what your favorite openings are.
Yeah, it is a good idea, though, not to chop and change for our openings. Just stick to one and know it really well, rather than thinking I've got to learn 5 or my opponent knows this better than me, so I've got to learn a new one. A lot of children, they have bad losses, and then they think, right, I need to give up the Sicilian because I just lost a bad game. You don't need to give it up. You need to work out what you did wrong and improve your knowledge of the Sicilian.
There's no such thing as a bad opening, so it's definitely not the opening's fault. It's just kind of understanding the ideas, the deeper ideas later in the game. And remember, chess shouldn't feel like homework. Like, you shouldn't be memorizing opening lines. You should be understanding why those are the best moves, not trying to memorize. Because if your opponent does something differently, you shouldn't keep playing the same move every time. You have to understand when to change or when to mix things up.
Excellent. So I've got some extra questions here that I was putting on the presentation before we started, and I've got some more on my phone. So we've got a few minutes, so I'll go through these. So what goes through your head when you're losing? Okay, and how do you recover? David's already addressed that. How did you learn to read the board? So that's from Mahilo. How did you learn to read the board?
Very good question. I do remember playing some games with my parents when I was young. So I would close my eyes and then they would say, what color is F8? And I'd say, okay, it's a black square on the back rank, on black's back rank. Or they'd say, what color is C4? Or where is it on the board? Or for example, they'd say a knight on G1, how many moves does it take to get to C6? And that kind of thing. And if you practice with a friend, or you can make different kind of games with those, automatically you'll start to slowly kind of figure out where C6 is and which side it is and what color it is. And that will actually just generally help with kind of piece mobility and things like that. You'll understand how the pieces coordinate with each other if you know the squares on the board better. So it's definitely worth investing some time on that. I know very strong players who sometimes struggle with the coordinates and things, and you can tell in their game that affects them sometimes. So yeah, playing some blindfold games with your friends, understanding what colors what, and that might be fun and hopefully will help.
Okay, I've got some more questions. I think these are quite difficult to answer because they're quite specific, but I'll have a go. They're from Ryan. So when do you exchange pieces, especially when materials are equal in both sides. So do you want to answer that, David, please?
Yeah, good question. I only exchange pieces if it doesn't cost me too much time and if it improves the position. So for example, if you have a weak king, then normally it's a good idea to exchange off the queens. Or if you have a better pawn structure, then you have to figure out which pieces you want to keep on the board and which ones, or which of your opponent's pieces are really strong, and try and exchange those ones off. So it all depends on who has the long-term advantage or kind of the short-term needs of the position. But don't waste time exchanging pieces if you don't think it helps you. You have to be 100% sure it helps you. And that's why sometimes we study endgames. You have to know how to checkmate with certain pieces because you want to keep those pieces on the board.
Yeah, and as David and I talked about yesterday when we were analysing the games for juniors, if you're ahead on points, swap the pieces off because it gets rid of the tension in the position and counterplay your opponent can get. Okay, and next question there, how to successfully keep tension and create it?
Ooh, that's a hard question. That's
it is hard.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first way to keep tension is keeping pieces on the board. So similar to the last question. If you keep more pieces on the board, if you slowly start bringing them towards your opponent's king, you know, your opponent can get slightly nervous. And I like to, in terms of creating tension, I like to set some kind of really small threats, some traps, because, okay, either your opponent will fall into those traps, which is great, or they'll see those traps coming and then they'll start to play a bit passively, or they'll get a bit nervous and they'll start reacting, and you'll be the one kind of dominating the game if they're always having to worry about these kind of small traps and tactics and things. So keeping tension, it's not easy, but you have to be sure that the long-term factors favor you as well. Just keep pieces on the board.
Okay, one final question. How to pawn storm correctly using the H-pawn?
Ooh, Harry the H-pawn. Yeah, it's a really tricky one. Actually, I nearly never do this in my own games. I only started trying a few years ago when this this AI program, AlphaZero, started doing it in every game. I guess Simon Williams, the Ginger GM, a lot of you mentioned him yesterday in our sessions. He does it all the time, but he nearly always plays H4 when his opponents played the move G6 to fianchetto their bishop on G7. That's a good moment to kind of push the pawn, because it's not about pushing the pawn. It's not about that at all. It's activating the rook on H1. That's the main thing. So if you think you can't castle kingside, then sometimes pushing the H-pawn is the best way to activate that rook. But yeah, I don't recommend it all the time, because actually chess it's like football. It's about the center of the board. It's like the midfield. You've got to control the center, and pushing the H-pawn only works if you've already controlled the center. And also going back to a question earlier, okay, Sarah's back now, but just going back to a question earlier about losing positions, I like to treat it like being a goalkeeper. You don't score any goals, you don't get all the glory, but if you save a lost position, then it's a different kind of satisfaction. So if you're defending, treat it like you're a goalkeeper. You just want to save the shots, stay in the game.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good. We've got a couple of minutes, so maybe I'll take one more question from the chat. If anyone who didn't get a question answered would like to answer anything, and then we'll start to put you into your groups ready for the sessions. And Anna-Rue's hand went straight up, so would you like to tell us? You have to unmute yourself.
Dave,
Hey.
what's your favourite opening?
Ooh, my favorite opening. I think even now, 20 years later, it's still the C3 Sicilian. I've played it against all the top players in the world. I managed to beat Kasparov with it. I drew with Carlsen with it. So it's partly because of the results, partly because I think you get to attack, Sicilian players really don't like to face the C3 Sicilian, and I like to annoy my opponents. So, yeah. How about yours? What's your favorite?
King's pawn opening.
Good choice.
Excellent. Okay, we'll take one more question then, and then we'll put you into your rooms for the sessions. So who's brave enough to ask a question?
Sarah, what's your favorite opening while we wait?
My favorite opening. Well, I really like the Italian. It's funny because everyone plays E4, E5 as a junior, and then I experimented with the French and the Sicilian, and then you always come back to it because it really is a great opening, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's right. All the top players in the world play it with both colours. So.
Yeah. Charlie has gone up. So Charlie, one question from you, and then we'll get going with the sessions.
Hi. This is a question for David or Sarah. Maybe both. When you reached your peak rating, was your final game? Did it feel really, really motivating to think I've won this game to get me here? Or was it more finally the last step? Or how did you view your last game getting to that? And
2700 for David. He got over 2700.
Yeah, 27-12, wasn't it?
That's right. Actually, I did slightly feel the pressure. So it was in 2015, and I was playing the British Championship just after my I played an event. I got 8.5 out of 9 against lots of GMs. So I got to 27-12, and then that was the first time I ever broke 2700. And the next, just 2 days later, I was playing the British Championship. I started with 5.5 out of 6, so I was actually 27-20 something on the live rating list. But then I try not to think about the rating, but then a friend messaged me being like, oh my God, look at your rating, it's so good. As soon as I thought about the rating, things started to go wrong, and I dropped a few points. So actually, how I treat things now, I mean, that was 5 years ago. How I treat things now is I just see it as, you mentioned the final step, but I just see it all on it's all a step on the way to somewhere better. You've got to aim really high. And I like to think, okay, although I've been 2700, the next step is further down the line, and it shouldn't feel any different. You don't want to put too much pressure on yourself because that can rebound. So
don't be obsessed by ratings, because a lot of juniors are absolutely obsessed by ratings, and it can be so damaging. You just got to play the game and enjoy the game, and then the rating will take care of itself. I really believe that.
No, good question.
I don't know about
I don't know about Sarah and you, Charlie, but I always play my best games when I'm not thinking about the rating, not thinking about the results.
Yeah, when you think, if I win this, I'll get to this rating and everything. It kind of adds another factor into the fact that you're just focusing on chess.
It's a bit like Sarah's story yesterday about the 147 rated.
Oh yeah.
So I was playing 147.
Yeah, if you don't look at the grade, just play the board. You'll beat anyone.
So same as yesterday, just make sure you're focused and enjoy what you learn.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, David. Thanks.